All right, well, hey, good morning. Welcome to Momentum. My name's Seth. It's so good to be with you guys this week. I've been away for the past few weeks at our McDonough campus, filling in some, but it's good feeling home, like being at home. Like when Carly says, welcome home, like I feel that today. It is so good to get to be back here. We took, like Carly said, our students to CIY last week, and I just want to say this about CIY. It is like this pocket of time where humanity is tested. And here's what I mean is like the most sleep I got on any night was 5 hours. The last night I got 3 hours of sleep. And I got a lot of sleep compared to some people. I know some of our boys didn't sleep much at all. I will say this about our young men of Forsyth. We by far probably have the rowdiest bunch. But it is a good rowdy. Like they are good young men. They're going to push every limit we have, and if there's a line, they're just going to step just a little bit beyond it and kind of jump on that and look at you in the face when they do that, Parker. But it is amazing to watch the Lord get a hold of their hearts because I'll deal with that. I love the energy. I love the excitement because they're not out doing crazy. They're not being bullies. They're kind to other kids. They incorporate, like, by the end of the night, it is a two-church wrestling match in the hallway on top of 6 mattresses. Like, they just bring other people in, and I love that community that gets to be built. And our young ladies are amazing. Like, we have leaders in this church that are young ladies that their hearts are on fire and watching them. So this week, when Carly talks about us having decisions, we had 4 students make a decision for the first time to follow Jesus, which is an amazing thing. And then tens upon tens make this decision to, okay, I'm going to recommit my life to Christ. Or there were challenges, Kingdom Worker cards, where we give them this little card that has a challenge on it. But the deal is, if they open the card, whatever the challenge is, they got to do it. Like they are making that commitment before they open the card. And when we said, all right, who wants to do this? I mean, the number of hands that went in the air were crazy because they take it incredibly seriously. So I just want to say, I'm proud of y'all. Love you guys. Love getting to do this with you guys. Leaders, I'm so thankful for you guys. You don't sleep. You serve tirelessly. You put up with all kinds of antics, but it is an amazing thing. And in that week, I see students and leaders alike come to these points of their faith is challenged, they're moved, they respond. I see students who've never sing before sing for the first time. Or if they sing regularly, their hand goes up for the first time. Or they'll confess a thing to other people. Or our nighttime where our big group is together, they're sharing things that I'm like, I can't believe they're sharing this in front of 80 other students, but they're vulnerable in that moment. And it's such a thing to be celebrated. So I just want to say thank you, and our future is good because these kiddos, these students are amazing. And God is going to do great things in their lives. And for us adults, we get to watch that. We get to be a part of coming alongside them, coming along together with them, supporting them in this journey, because there will be a day when we turn this stuff over to this next generation fully, which is why we want to incorporate them in what we're doing today so they're equipped and ready to go when it is their turn to fully lead out and everything. So love you guys, proud of y'all. So today we're going to be actually in the book of Ephesians, which at CIY, this whole week we were in the book of Ephesians, and all of these speakers, they danced around kind of where I was going to be today, but nobody was fully on this one, which I'm like, okay, good, because I don't want to be compared to some of those speakers. So today we're going to, like Carly said, we're going to continue this series called One Thing. If you haven't been with us, let me just give you a 20-second cliff notes. In life, all of us feel stretched in a million different directions. And I know summer feels a little calmer, but guess what? August is around the corner, and mom, dad, students, you're going to start to get pulled into sporting events and school things and work things, and we start to feel stretched in every way. So in Scripture, we see these moments where Jesus says directly, or God will say it through another human being, like, breathe. There's one thing you need to know right now. There's one thing that I need you to focus on right now. So that's what we're doing with this series, is we're looking at all of these different one things. And the thing with the one things is sometimes they sound really simple, but more often than not, they're extremely difficult things for us to actually do. So today in Ephesians chapter 4, the author Paul, he gives us this vision of oneness that is so beautiful, but it's also brutally challenging at the exact same time. And here's ultimately what he says. He says to the church in Ephesus, he says, I need you all. I need us to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called. And I know for all my legalistic friends, you're like, well, he didn't say the word one or one thing in there. Don't sweat it. We're going to get to the ones and the one things in this. But our one thing this week is one calling. And here's why I think that matters, is that every single one of us, to some extent, we want to know our calling. A lot of us have wrestled through this in life. What am I called to do? What does this next season look like for me? Students, as they start approaching that junior and senior year, that becomes the question that is weighing on them so heavily. What's my calling in life? What's my purpose in life? What's God's will for my life? We all want to know some version of our calling. And even those of you who wouldn't use church language, you still want the same thing. We all want to know why I'm here, why I exist, what I'm supposed to be about, what my purpose is supposed to be, what I'm supposed to give my life to, what can I do that actually makes a difference in the world. And often when we think about calling and purpose, we think of assignment. So we think of my job or my gifting or this assignment that I have, this purpose in life. And listen, I believe that God does give those things. God specifically gives us assignments in season. God gives us gifts. And we all have different gifts. So he has given you very, very specific gifts that are often different than my gifts. And the gifts that he's given me are different than your gifts. So he does give us gifts. And God does open doors. Like many of you have walked through that season where you're praying and you're pleading and you're begging God, I need you to open a door for me. And sometimes it's like, boom, we see the door open. And then there's times when we're just walking and we realize later down the road, he did answer this. He did open the door for me. I didn't see it in the moment, but he did. So I believe that he gives us gifts. He opens doors for us. God calls us to work for specific seasons, like he will call you into this thing for a season. But when we get to Ephesians chapter 4, that's not really what Paul's talking about with calling. When we get to Ephesians chapter 4, Paul's not talking about your career aspirations or your unique contribution in the world. What he's really talking about is the shared calling of the people of God. Because here's what I want you to know. Before your calling is ever individual, which it is, but before it's ever individual, it is always communal. There is a communal calling on all of us first and foremost that is almost more important than your individual unique contribution to the world. So it's less about what you do and so much more about who you are and who you are becoming. And Paul says to that, walk worthy of the calling to which I've given you. And here's the thing, is that we live in this culture that is obsessed with personal calling, but it's deeply confused about communal responsibility. So most of the time as students are growing older, they start to wrestle with calling. Or adults, we jump into a career and we start to get restless and we start to say, like, I don't know if I'm called to this. What am I really, what's going to fulfill me? What's the thing? We obsess about that, but left out of our language is this responsibility we have to the community at large. And the thing is Paul doesn't let us do that. He says, if you've been called by God, and to be clear, as followers of Jesus, every single one of us have been called by God. So Paul says, if you've been called by God, then you should walk in a way that fits your calling. And he'll go on to list a few things. He'll say with gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love. And he says that's the test. The test isn't what you know, how religious you are, how moral you are, what you believe to be true, what you post on social media. He says that's not the test. The test is how you walk when people are hard. How you walk when you don't get your preference. How you walk when someone wounds your pride. How you walk in the moment when someone sins against you. That is the real test. And I think here's the biggest tension, is that most of us want the benefits of Christian calling. We want to feel called by God, and we want to feel purpose in our life. We want the benefits of Christian calling without the demands that come with Christian unity. Here's what I mean, is that we all want forgiveness. If you have ever messed up before, if you've messed up in your marriage, if you've messed up in parenting, students, if you've messed up in life, if you've messed up before, we beg for forgiveness. But sometimes we are the ones that actually struggle to forgive other people when they hurt us. Or we want grace. I need grace in my life, but I struggle to be gracious sometimes. I think we all want belonging. To some extent, we all want to belong. Now, we belong to different levels. Some of you are extroverts, and you want to belong to everybody. Those of us who are introverts, we think you're psycho, okay? We want a few people to belong to, and we're good. But every single one of us, we all want to experience belonging. But at the same time, most of us struggle to make room to belong. Our schedules are too full, or we just can't fit, or we struggle in the vulnerability aspect of I don't know if I really want to do this. We want truth and we want to be able to speak truth, but we struggle with gentleness sometimes. We want community. We talk about community. Community is such a buzzword in the church and in culture. We want community, but we struggle with patience because patience is required for community. So into that reality, Paul writes, and he says, one calling, one people, one God. So Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1, here's how he starts out. He says, I therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to the one hope that belongs to your call, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. So there's all your one words wrapped up into one passage. So this Ephesians chapter 4 starts out with therefore, which means that Ephesians 4 is built on everything that has happened in Ephesians chapters 1 through 3. So context for us is critical. And I'll just say this, anytime we read scriptures, context is always critical. It is not good enough to just say, well, that's what the Bible says, so that's what I believe, or that's what I'm going to do. Because by definition, if we don't consider the context of when it was written and to whom it was written, we are taking that verse out of context. Context always matters. So the book of Ephesians is written somewhere 60 to 62 AD. So very, very early. Paul, the author, is in house arrest in Rome. So as he's writing this letter to this church in Ephesus, he's not sitting in a corner office suite with Wi-Fi and Starbucks where everything's comfy and nice. He's chained to a Roman soldier, and he ends up writing one of the most theologically rich letters that we have in the New Testament. So that is kind of background for this. And the thing about Ephesus, the city to which the church is that he's writing to, was one of the most cosmopolitan and diverse cities of the ancient world. So it was a city where we had Roman polytheism. So the Romans believed in many gods. And their religious beliefs and their cultural beliefs were all about appeasing the God of love, the God of peace, the God of water, the God of this, the God of that. So we have this Roman polytheism existing in the city. We also have Greek philosophy because intellect and knowledge and philosophy was the God of the Greeks. So those two things are bumping up against one another in this city. You also have Jewish synagogue communities, these ancient ritualistic Jews that held firmly to the Torah. They were in this city as well. So now there's many gods, and the Jews are saying, no, there's just one God. And we've got the Greeks saying, yeah, the God is the mind, philosophy. And then we also have this new group of people that didn't exist 30 years ago, now called Christians, who were Gentiles. They were Greeks, or they were Romans, or some of them were Jews who found Christ, and now they're learning to live and walk in these ways of Jesus. So they're all in this one city together. So they're all within the same city blocks trying to figure out who they were and what they believed and what their purpose was in life. In so many ways, it is just like the world that you and I woke up in today. Because we can think, because we live in Middle Georgia and we live in the South and we live in the Bible Belt, that everybody is a Christian. But everybody is not a Christian. Even some of the people that call themselves Christian, there's no fruit, there's no evidence of that in their life. And culturally, we see all kinds of other things coming in. So this world that Paul is writing to, is very, very similar to our world. And this church in Ephesus is just as diverse. So some people in the church were Jews who grew up with the scriptures. They had the promises, they had the covenants, the law, they had the stories of Abraham, and they ended up making their way to Jesus, but when they come to Jesus, they're bringing all of those other things with them. But then we have these Gentiles who came from pagan backgrounds, worshiping different gods, worshiping the mind, and they come to Christ, and they're bringing all of that stuff with them. So these were two different groups of people that had mutual contempt for each other for centuries. So Paul spends the first 3 chapters of Ephesians unpacking doctrine. And in the process, what he does is he reveals that through Christ, God has done something that human beings could never do themselves. He's made one new humanity out of all of this diversity. And he does it not by pretending that differences don't exist, because differences do exist. We are different from one another. Some of the things that I love and I'm passionate about would bore you to death. And some of you tell me the things that you love and you're passionate about, and I'm thinking like, okay, I don't care about this right now. Like, we're different. Differences exist amongst us. He doesn't erase ethnic or cultural or personal distinctions, because those exist as well. But what he does is he talks about how God makes this one new humanity by reconciling sinners to God first, and then he reconciles them to one another as well. Which means that Jesus didn't merely come to give individual private experiences. He doesn't just come for our own personal spiritual experiences first and foremost. He came to form a people. He came to build a family. And I think that's beautiful, but it's also really, really difficult, because you're difficult sometimes. I'm difficult a lot of times. Ask Melissa, she'll tell you. The person sitting next to you, don't look at them. You know as well as I do, they'd be difficult, right? Like, people are just difficult. And I think this is why Ephesians chapter 4 begins the way it does. Paul is telling this fragmented, diverse, tension-filled church that they've got to live differently. He says, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called. In other words, because God's done all of this, Ephesians chapters 1, 2, and 3, all of the doctrine, all of the restoration, because God has done all of this, you got to walk like it. Because he has come in and he stepped in and he's intervened and he's rescued and he's redeemed and he's changed and he's sent. Because he's done all of these things, you actually have to walk like it. But he says, don't just walk like it, walk worthy. Worthy is such a powerful word in this. In the ancient idea, the idea of worthy carried weight, it had significance, it had balance to it. Ultimately, what Paul is saying is, let your life carry the weight of the calling of which you've been called. Like, as we follow Jesus and as we walk towards him and walk towards other people, there should be a weight to it. It shouldn't be easy. It shouldn't just be thoughtless, careless, mindless, whatever. There should be a weight as we walk with Christ. Doesn't mean we're going to do it perfectly. We're not going to do it flawlessly. But there should be some correspondence between the gospel that we confess with our mouth and the life that we live. But as a people, it's really easy for us to say the things that we believe and that we know, but our life looks nothing like it. And Paul says that can't exist. The things that we confess, our life should walk in that same direction. And then he tells us how, verse 2, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love. These words, humility and gentleness and patience, they weren't celebrated in the ancient, like, Greco-Roman world the way that we might assume. And honestly, I'm not really even sure that we celebrate those truly in our culture. Like, humility is highly regarded. We love the idea of humility. We talk about, like, he's such a humble person or she's such a humble person. But it's very hard for us to actually live out, because most of us have an inner lawyer in our head that's always arguing our case. There's something inside of us that is constantly building our case for why we do or why we say what we do, of why we're right or why we're misunderstood or why our motives were pure and their motives weren't pure, or why our reaction was justified, and if they just wouldn't do this to us, then we wouldn't have had to do this to them. We always are arguing our case. Gentleness and patience, those are things that sound really good. But if we're honest, most of them associate them with weakness. I don't know many guys that are running around saying, I just want to be a really gentle man. That's just not how we're built. It doesn't feel like that should fit. It doesn't feel like a thing we actually want to chase after. A few weeks ago, there was this viral video that went on Facebook and Instagram and all the things. You maybe have seen it. There was a pastor in Louisiana, and he's out cutting his yard, doing whatever the thing is. Guy across the street from him, yelling all kinds of things, screaming all kinds of things, making all kinds of threats. This pastor comes out of his yard, he crosses the street, and it's like WWE. He like lays the smack down on this guy. I'm gonna be honest. As I watched that video, there was a whole lot of wrestle in me. There's a part of me that loves it. Like, I want to see somebody get whooped. I want to see the UFC. I want to see all the things. But there's another part of me that just, it doesn't sit right. And then I made the fatal mistake of humanity, and I clicked on the comments, and I started reading people's comments. And like 99.9% of Christians on there were saying things like, now that's a pastor. I wish he was my shepherd. Can he please come lead my church? And the problem is, as I read through them, at the same time as I'm studying for this message, and there's this line of, walk worthy with all humility and gentleness and patience and bearing with one another in love. And I wrestle because in the comments, we don't see that was the first reaction. That wasn't anybody's first thought. It was, he deserved it. Let's do the thing. I wish he was my guy. I wrestle with that. I think at some point we actually have to ask the question, do we actually believe what we say we believe? Because walking worthy means our reactions must come under the lordship of Jesus. Our outrage in life, our protectiveness in life, our anger, our sarcasm, our online comments, our need to be seen as strong all the time must be submitted to the calling that the Lord has placed on our lives first. Christianity, to walk like Jesus, takes humility and gentleness and patience, and it puts those things in the center of spiritual maturity because those are the attributes of Jesus himself. When we look at the life of Jesus, God in flesh, the visual representation of who God is, how God thinks, how God would behave, that is embodied in Jesus. And when we look at the life of Jesus, the thing that we see put on display is gentleness and patience and kindness and humility and truth balanced with grace. That is what we see first. So Paul goes on to say, he says, so you've got to be eager, like put effort, excited about maintaining the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And I think that's important because Paul doesn't say that you and I have to create unity. He's not saying that unity is the thing that we create. He says you have to maintain the unity of the Spirit. In other words, Christian unity is not something that we have to manufacture. It is something that is given to us by God through the Spirit, and we have to steward it together. But remember, what we're stewarding, this unity requires humility, gentleness, patience, bearing with one another in love. In other words, the first evidence that you understand your calling is not that you're impressive, not that you're successful, not that you feel like you're fulfilling your purpose in life. The first evidence that you're fulfilling your calling is that you're becoming more loving. Paul is assuming that the church will require endurance with one another. He's assuming that there will be moments where love is not easy because it's not always easy. He's assuming that there will be moments when unity doesn't come naturally. But before he gets to telling them how to do this, he tells them why this is important. He says, because there's one body and one Spirit, just as you called to the one hope that belongs to your call. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, and one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. So he gives us these 7 ones, and the 7 ones aren't random. They sound random. They sound all kinds of like religious language, but they're not random. They're the foundation underneath the calling that he tells them they must walk in. They're the things that answer the question of why should we walk worthy together? Because the truth is you and I, we're not disconnected individuals with our own spiritual realities on our own individual spiritual journeys. We are one people held together by one God. He says there's one body, which means that the church is not a crowd. It's not just this random crowd. A crowd gathers around an event, but a body is joined together by life. A crowd is all about show, production. They're consuming, give me this, that was good, this wasn't good, I want more of this. A body contributes. So when Paul says there's one body, he's saying you belong to something that is so much larger, so much bigger than yourself and your own personal preferences. But everything in our world disciples us to think of ourselves as individual consumers. So I choose what serves me. I leave what no longer fits me. I build my life around my preferences. But Paul's saying the gospel brings us together as one body, which means that the church is not merely a place that I attend, but it is a place, a people to whom I belong. And if I believe that I belong to a body, then it's it's convicting for me, because then I understand that my bitterness affects the body. It means that my gifts would bless the body. My absence weakens the body. My presence strengthens the body. My love builds up the body. Paul says there's one body, so walk worthy. He says there's one Spirit. The same Spirit who raised Jesus Christ from the dead dwells inside of the people of God. Like, that is what our belief is, that the Spirit of the living God lives inside of us as followers of Jesus. Which means that same Spirit who comes alongside you and comforts you is also forming the person that frustrates you. The person that irritates you so much, the person that you can't stand, that Spirit is guiding them and comforting them and convicting them. The same Spirit who convicts you is also working in the person that you're just tempted to dismiss. You feel such strong convictions about Christians got to do this and we got to walk this way. That Spirit that makes you feel and believe and say those things is also working in the life of the person that you speak against. We often assume unity depends on this natural compatibility. But Christian unity is not built on chemistry. It is built on the Spirit of God. And Paul says there's one Spirit, so walk worthy. He says there's one hope. Now, hope is not wishful thinking. When we say hope, it's usually like my best wish, this is what I want to happen. I hope it's sunny today. I hope we get to go swimming. I hope vacation's fun. I hope my in-laws don't drive me nuts. I hope this. I hope that. Like we'd like best case scenario, all of these things. But that's really not what Christian hope is. It is a shared vision, shared future for the people of God, which means that we, us, followers of Jesus, are not ultimately held together by shared preferences about the present. We're held together by shared hope about the future. So our final hope is not in our comfort. Our final hope isn't in our finances or our control or our success or our politicians. Our hope is in the resurrection, new creation, Christ himself returning to restore and redeem all things. And this one hope is the hope that gives us an endurance when our world is crazy. This hope is the thing that allows us to love imperfect people because Christ is making all things new, including you and me and them and they. There's one hope. So he says, walk worthy. He says there's one Lord. In Cliff Notes, it's not me, and it's not you, it's Jesus. It's not the loudest person in the room, the biggest personality in the room, the best leader in the room, the most gifted. That's not who. The Lord is Christ himself, which is essential for unity because churches fracture and divide when everyone is trying to be the Lord. When it all is about my preferences or your preferences and how they should rule, when it becomes about my comfort or my conviction, when it's me, mine, and Paul says there's one Lord. So the path to unity is not everyone getting their way. The path to unity is everyone surrendering to Jesus and understanding that we're not all going to see the same thing clearly. We're not going to all agree on the same thing. So we're going to submit to one another. So there's one Lord, so walk worthy. It says there's one faith. We are united by the gospel. That is the thing that unites us. We're saved by grace through faith, not by our works, which means this body, there's no one in it that is above anyone else. There's not impressive Christians and charity case Christians. We've all been saved by grace. So there's one faith, and he says, walk worthy. He says there's one baptism. Baptism is this public ceremony signifying that we belong to Jesus, we've given our life to him, we're united with him. We've been buried with Christ, we've been raised with Christ, we now belong to his people, we've been joined to them. Baptism is telling us that we don't enter the church through achievement. We enter this family of God through death and resurrection. And the thing that's most beautiful to me about baptism is we set up this, basically it's a hot tub with just tap water. And in those waters, we have the rich and the poor come through the same waters. The old and the young come to the Lord through the same waters. The polished and the messy come to the Lord through the same waters. One baptism, one family. He says, walk worthy. Then he finishes this section. He says, there's one God and Father of all. Overall is the idea that God is sovereign. He is king of the universe. Everything is in his hands. He's not shocked. He's not surprised. He's in control of everything. Here is one God who is overall. But he's not just overall at a distance. He's not just sitting way back from humanity with his arms crossed, knowing what's going to happen. But it says he's through all. He's active in it all. So he's navigating this. He's understanding. He doesn't just know the thing, but he's active in the movement of his creation. But he's not doing that from a distance. He's not way away from humanity, just knowing all the things, then being active from a distance. It says he's also in all. He's present. He sends the Spirit to be present in the hearts and the lives of the believers and of the church. So our unity is rooted in the nature and the work of God. The Father, Son, and Spirit exist eternally in perfect love and glory. So when the church walks in unity, without saying a word, we are telling the truth about who God is. And when the church, whether it's Momentum or the big church as a whole, when we devour ourselves, we lie about God. When people who naturally should not be together start loving with one another, bearing with one another, forgiving one another, being gracious to one another, walking together, the world sees something supernatural. What they see isn't uniformity, they see unity. Unity under one Lord, one Spirit, before one Father. One calling, one people, one God. And Paul continually says, walk worthy. So let me just close with this question. Where is my walk? Where is your walk out of step with your calling? I think one of the dangers of modern Christianity is that we read the Bibles almost always as individuals. So we sit down with our Bibles open, we'll be at home on our quiet time or listening to it in the radio in the car as we drive, and we ask questions like, what does this mean for me? What is God saying to me? How does this help me? What does God want me to do? And those aren't bad questions, but they are incomplete questions. Ephesians chapter 4 is written to the church, to the body of Christ. And what Paul says is, you, all y'all, me, us, together, we have to walk worthy. We have to maintain unity. We have to bear with one another. To walk worthy means I stop seeing the church as a place that exists to meet my needs, and I actually start seeing it as a people to whom I belong. And when we make that shift in our mind, it changes things. It changes how I show up. It changes how I serve. It changes how I speak. It changes how I disagree with you. It changes how I interact with you. It changes how I forgive you. It changes how you forgive me. But Paul tells us what that's going to require. That change is going to require humility, gentleness, patience, bearing with one another in love. So my question, what from that list is missing from your life? And listen, this is going to sound harsh, but I mean it in love. Christianity begins with the confession that Jesus is Lord. Not Jesus is helpful, not Jesus is inspiring, not any of those things, that he is Lord. And if that's true, if Jesus is Lord, then it means I do not get to use my personality as an excuse for immaturity. I don't get to say that. I don't get to say, this is just the way I'm wired, you don't understand, this is just the way that I am. I don't get to use that as an excuse for my own immaturity. I don't get to use my pain as permission for the bitterness that I carry. Some of us have been wounded and hurt by something. We drag around this bitterness. It's like a dead dog that smells everywhere. And we use it as an excuse because somebody hurt us or somebody did something to us. We don't get to use that as an excuse anymore. We don't get to use our own personal conviction as permission to be cruel to somebody else. They, them, what they're doing, it's not of God. We don't get to use that as an excuse for cruelty. We can feel the conviction. We can feel that it's wrong, but we do not get to be cruel with how we treat them. I don't get to use my preference as a reason to cause division. And listen, this one's probably the hardest hitting one, especially where we live in our country, and especially because we're just rolling off of July 4th. We don't get to use our personal freedom as permission for selfishness. I love that we live in a free country. I love our country. I love the freedom that it gives us. But just because I am free and just because you have been given freedom, we do not get to use that at the expense of other human beings. I do not get to use my freedom and be selfish in it. There is one Lord, and he is the one that put the calling on your life and on my life. So again, my question is, where is your walk out of step with your calling? But by God's grace, the good news is he allows us to make our way back. Paul says, walk worthy. He doesn't say you're damned, you're condemned, you've messed it up, forget you. He says, no, get up, put some effort in this, feel the weight behind it, put energy in it, and walk worthy. Put struggle, put effort, move towards others. It's going to cost you, it's going to hurt you, it's going to be heavy. The burden is on you, but walk worthy because there's one Lord, one people, one calling. Walk worthy. Would you pray with me? Father God, I'm thankful for who you are. And as we read through Ephesians chapter 4, God, I'm thankful that you have entrusted us with this. I'm thankful that you love us enough not just to sit back at this crazy distance and just watch how things play out like this is just a big experiment. But you are over all. You know how this thing plays out. You're through all. You're active. You're present. And you're in all. You are present in our lives, and you've entrusted us. You have given us the commission to walk worthy of the calling to which we've been called. So God, I pray that we would be men, women, that would feel the weight behind that. That we would be the men and women that take our faith seriously. That we would put effort and energy, not because we're trying to earn something. You've given us this as a free gift. But in response to that, that our effort and energy would be that we would take this gift seriously and we would use it to bless humanity. God, we love you. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.